This is an invitation to awe. It's an invitation. You've heard me say this before. It is not a demand. It's an invitation. It's an invitation to devote time to embrace the wonder of who you are, the wonder of who we are. It's time for us to call out the healer, to call out the healer that exists within each and every single one of us, to call the healer out, to welcome the healer, to honor the healer, to support the healers that exist within each of us. Deep down, you know the truth about what I'm pointing at, that we exist at all is a miracle. Again, I'm going to ask that you mute yourself because I'm noticing that there's some reverberation. So if you can mute, that would be helpful. Thank you. That you can breathe. Again, I invite you to breathe. That you can see a smile and notice the distinction between a smile and a frown. That you can taste a pickle. That you can dance with a partner. That you can smell a freshly mowed lawn. Enjoy music. All of these things are miraculous, and often we take them for granted. As humans, we have the ability to imagine what has not yet ever occurred. We have the ability to actually be the actions that are needed at this point in time to move us towards a healthier future. The more science discovers about these faculties, the more we appreciate how amazing these faculties really are. We are in the midst of miracles, surrounded by miracles, and yet we become profoundly, profoundly distracted. We neglect and misplace the sense of wonder about life and all that is present, all of the gifts we have been given. We are thirsty in the abundance of water. To achieve wholeness, this is an invitation. Again, it's not a demand. To achieve wholeness, we need a new health-oriented worldview. By working together, and collectively, we begin the song of call and response. It is a song, it is a call to call and respond to an environmentally thriving, scientifically valid, socially just, and spiritually creative path of cooperative, thriving, and flourishing. I'm going to invite you to breathe. So I invited you to bring seeds. How many of you were able to bring a seed to the session? I'm going to invite you to get your seed. Yeah, bring your seed out. Show us your seed. Let's see what seeds you brought. Ah, good. Yes, sweet. Very good. Oh, look, beautiful seeds. Very good. And so what I would like you to do, if you're willing, it's again, all of this is an invitation. In the chat, type in your name and the seed you brought. So you don't have to know the scientific name of it. You can just put watermelon seed or cantaloupe seed. So I'm going to invite you to type in your, yes, look how beautiful seeds. So I'm going to invite you to type in your name and what seed you brought. And I invite you to breathe.
Where do we type it in?
In the chat. Nathan, you may need to support the community in knowing how to find the chat, or anybody who's on the call.
Yeah, so if you look at your bottom bar, you'll see a bunch of buttons, including mute, like start video, security, participants, and then one of those buttons should also be chat. If you cannot find that, there might be also a button on the side which has 3 dots, and you can click that and it'll open up more options where the chat should probably be listed.
So we have flax and barley and avocado and pumpkin and plum and dill and kiwi and sesame and raspberry and orange. Yes, we live in a miraculous, amazing world. So in this moment, I'm going to invite you again to hold on to your seed. Just kind of hold your seed, however that speaks to you. And I want you to imagine and invite you to get comfortable as you're holding the seed. And I'm going to invite you to breathe while you're holding the seed. And as you're breathing, I want you to imagine all of the systems that are in that seed. All of the invisible systems that you cannot see with your naked eye. And I want you to remember that at one point in time, you were a seed. You too were a seed with invisible systems. I invite you to breathe. And I want you to imagine how those systems are still working in you. They have not disappeared. Those invisible systems are still within you. I invite you to breathe. Mm-hmm. If those systems could speak to you, you're not going to answer this now. If those systems could speak to you, what is it that they call you to today? So we're going to explore more imagination, but in this moment, Susan's going to bring us into a preview, or not a preview, a summary of what we looked at the last time we were together. But I want you to hold on to your seed because we're going to be needing these later. Susan?
Now, in our last session, we were looking at fertilization and the standard myths that have been presented to us about the hero story, which another scientist called the prick tale. But all parties are participant in the story. And we also found that when the sperm is ejaculated, it's immature. And when the egg is released from the ovary, it's immature. So we looked at the immaturity of these cells, and we looked at what takes a part in helping them become more mature. And the sperm gets more mature with the help of cells from the woman's reproductive tract that facilitate the sperm from being able, by changing proteins on its membrane, to be able to sense the direction of the egg. The egg is emitting elements, chemicals, vibration signals. And once the sperm is activated, it knows which direction to swim, and it's encouraged to swim faster. There's a harsh environment in the woman's reproductive tract because it's also protecting from invasion of foreign elements. But nevertheless, that tract is facilitating the sperm moving ahead. And when some sperm reaches where the egg is. There isn't a boring into her. There is a kind of a mutual acceptance. Maybe there's a particular sweet spot on her that a particular sensitive sperm is able to detect, and the he actually spoons with the egg surface, and the egg surface embraces and takes him into her. So it's more a story of mutuality, mutual. Oh, and once he has been embraced, then he gives the signal to her to do the cell division that she needs to do so that she won't have 46 chromosomes, so that she'll have only 23 chromosomes to meet his 23 chromosomes.
So I'm going to, in the imagining, also allow us to step out of the he, her concept. It's not necessarily a he sperm or a her sperm or a her egg. Just to allow us to expand a little bit beyond some of the paradigms. But it is a sperm, and it is an egg, and it's about the work of creation. So why is this relevant? I'm choosing to believe that we are violent as we are because we really don't understand all the inner workings, the cooperation, the collaboration, the relationship exchanges, the sharing of resources. We don't have access to that because we've been so busy focusing on the hunt, the kill, the competition. And I'm not pushing those things away. I'm inviting us to the balance. And so for me to understand the miracle of who we are today, how we really work internally, is imperative to interrupt violence. Scott, why is this relevant to you? You're muted, Scott.
Unmute.
There.
Okay. O asked us to bring in seeds. And so I want to start by saying the Earth Seed prayer from Octavia Butler, a Black woman science fiction writer, which was, all that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. And what we are going to continue today, I think, is looking at how the mutual reciprocity and the mutual maturation of the sperm and the egg to create the zygote continues in our story of how the body develops. Nothing develops by itself. Everything matures each other. And it's the interactions, it's the reciprocity that causes the body to come into being. And I just find that the embryo has solved so many of the problems of societies. How parts interact to form wholes, how wholes interact with the parts to constrain them from going in different directions. I'm very interested in how bodies are made, and what we'll talk about today is this communication system by which parts are allowed to mature. I'll mention the ideology that we are often taught, and taught continuously, which is that basically our bodies are epiphenomena of DNA, that the DNA causes our bodies to form. And I will say that the DNA is indeed part of the story, but it's a much more interactive story than the kind of master-slave notions of hierarchy that are in DNA forms the body. The body also tells the DNA what to do. And well, that's what we'll talk about. And I just find it so significant that the body forms as an interacting whole where the DNA is part of it, not the creator of it.
Thank you, Scott. Susan, why is it relevant to you?
I think these conversations that we're having and specifically focusing around the biology of the body are critical now at this time of crisis, which is kind of shocking us and jolting us out of a trance or a stupor or having bought into a lot of narratives that we've been fed. That I think it's a crisis of separation. And what we're finding in biology is that it isn't separation. A lot of parties are playing a role, including the environment or the container itself. We can't fix the problems that we're facing in the crisis by fixing separate problems. Einstein, my favorite quote is, "The significant problems we have cannot be solved at the same level of thinking with which we created them." So I don't know that science as it's constituted right now can create. Technology cannot solve our problems. We need to move to a more holistic view, a less separatist paradigm, more heart connected. And I feel that the hearts that are on this call, you know, are wide open and searching for, how can I shift the consciousness around me to a more wholesome future? And we're floundering a little bit, despite the fact that our hearts are big, because I think the vision is not very clear. There's a wonderful quote from Michael Beckwith that pain pushes until vision pulls. It might have been a quote that he got from talking about women in labor. Pain pushes until vision pulls. And this crisis is the pain. And we need to be the imaginal cells that are clarifying the vision. I'm suggesting that we look at the principles of life as we can see them happening between cells and within the body and even within the cells, to expand our container, understand the call and response of life, and have our generation generate a new vision for humanity to live into, and to be able to live more embedded within nature instead of separate from nature, more understanding our role as stewards. So this fuller information that will be coming across in our discussions is in putting things in form that will be how the future unfolds. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. So every time we get together, I'm going to show this picture every time, because this is what we're working for. This is what we're standing for. This is what we're hopefully reclaiming as our sacred ground. As we're exploring science, Scott's going to manage all the complexities, the language, the words around science that I'm clueless around. But when I hear it, I recognize it. Even though I don't understand the words, some part of me recognizes it. I choose to believe just as our planet is holy ground, so are we. We are holy ground. And we are not treating our planet well. And we're not treating our planet well because we are not treating ourselves well. We have been pulled into a culture that is rooted in sacrifice. It is a culture rooted in sacrifice. It demands sacrifice. Sacrifice of our trees, sacrifice of our water, sacrifice of our air, sacrifice of our land, sacrifice of our children. It must stop. And it can't stop without us. This is relational. It's a call to relationship. It's a call to reclaim oneself. It's a call to reclaim each other. It's a call to say yes to life. How about yes to life? Let's try that. Let's say yes to life. Yes to life. Yes to life. It is an invitation. It can't be a demand, because once it becomes a demand, it's no longer love. It's an invitation. I invite you to breathe. And so hopefully what will happen in this time, I would like you to listen as Scott is speaking and Susan is speaking and the video is speaking. We need you to listen and pay attention to where are you seeing nature's rules or nature's laws or nature's principles or nature's call to us. What is nature asking of us that we can align with nature instead of constantly competing against her? I invite you to breathe. Susan?
I was watching a play about Gloria Steinem. You may already know that she was a person that was an activist for women's rights and was a main proponent of the Equal Rights Amendment. And in this play, she talked about encountering a Cherokee woman who told her about a different kind of governance systems that the Cherokee used, and that was that they didn't have a leader. They might select a chief, and it was the women elders that would select the chief, but they would sit in council and they would listen and speak and listen and consider, and then come to a decision that they felt was the most true. And Gloria Steinem's reaction to that is, oh, it's a linked system, not a ranked system. And somehow our culture has really, in a false kind of dead end trail, adopted hierarchy as the main structure for governance. In the hierarchy, power is decided at one level. To advance to that level, it's a pyramid shape. You have to compete rather than help and share and support your fellows. There's slower progress in a hierarchy because to get permission from above or requests from above, it has to pass up the chain, and there could be somebody that stops it in the middle of the chain before it gets to the top. So there's less innovation in a hierarchical structure, and the lowest ranks are usually not happy. So the thing I want to point to about a hierarchy is it's not nature's most common structure. Pack wolves have a leader for the hunt. You know, elephants have a leader to find the water because they have the memory of where it was. But a forest doesn't have a leader. And the thing that's the most important to notice is that a hierarchical structure is not an agile structure. It's not able to respond quickly when there's fast changing things happening in the culture or the environment. So we're looking more for a linked system, and I'm going to read a little quote from a African person named Bayo Akomolofe. He says, leadership is about attunement to an electrifying proposal. It's about the sensuousness of one's situatedness within a heap. It's about coming alive in a way. So
Thank you. Thank you.
linked rather than ranked. It's where we want to go.
So Scott, you're now going to bring us into organ formation. Let's look at how the body actually forms that is outside of this hierarchical structure.
Okay, thank you very much. Nathan, I'm going to be asking you for some slides. Is that okay?
Yep, just let me know when to move the slides. Let me get it up just
Great.
quickly.
Okay. I'm going to be talking about what Susan just mentioned about this call to relationship being non-hierarchical. and a linked system rather than a ranked system. And I want to start off with what we're being told, what falsehoods, in a way, what myths we are being told. And the major myth, the hierarchical myth that we're told, is that our bodies are products of just DNA, that DNA makes our bodies, kind of a hierarchical master-slave relationship. DNA has control over the matter of our bodies, the cells, DNA controls. And what we are told, and this is from a book that was done by Philadelphia people, Dot Nelkin and Susan Lindy, a book called The DNA Mystique. And they looked at how does the culture represent DNA? And they didn't look in the scientific journals. They looked in, Red Book, Newsweek, Cosmopolitan, Vogue. How is DNA represented? And what they found was fascinating and very frightening, which was that DNA is represented as your soul. DNA is represented as that which is your essence, that which determines your behaviors, and also that from which you can be resurrected after death, like in Jurassic Park. Okay, so DNA was your essence. That's what we're being taught. And we're being taught that daily, and it's being used politically. For instance, in the next slide, Life magazine says, the result of fertilization is a single nucleus that contains an entire biological blueprint for a new individual, genetic information governing everything from the length of the nose to the diseases that will be inherited. This is wrong, but this is what we're being told. This is being used in the abortion controversy. And whatever your opinion on abortion is, it is wrong to justify it scientifically by saying that life begins at fertilization because the DNA, which is the essence of who you are, is brought together there. But one of the anti-choice websites says, and even more amazingly, intelligence and personality, the way you look and feel, were already in place in your genetic code. At the moment of conception, you were essentially and uniquely you. That's wrong. We're being told this, you can say in the next slide, by the 23andMe and Ancestry.com advertisements. Nate, if I could see the next slide. Hey, that the genes determine who we are. And as Ancestry.com says, we will be revealing what it is that makes you, you. No, it doesn't. We're being told that every day in the advertising for, of all things, automobiles. Do cars have DNA? Take a look at the next ad. Okay, here's the BMW, wonderful thing with the DNA double helix in the grill. Let me show you another ad. Okay, this is the ad for the medium-sized Hummer, smaller version of the Hummer. It says, same DNA, smaller chromosomes. In other words, it's a small version, but it has the same essence. DNA is essence. Next ad. The Jeep Compass. It's in its genes. The new 2011 Jeep Compass is genetically engineered. No, it is not genetically engineered. It's engineered. Has nothing to do with genes. But what it says here, the evolution of a legendary bloodline. They're saying that the essence of being a Jeep is in the new Jeep Compass. Next ad. Okay, these are just lots of ads with DNA as the essence, and this is all for automobiles. This is how ingrained it is in American society, but this is not how science knows it to be. Genes don't create bodies. Cells create bodies. And the DNA is part of this communication network that's in the cells. It is the center of an amazingly complex network of cell membranes, cell cytoplasm, cell nucleus, cell DNA, which is communicating. It's a central part of a communication network. And if I can have the next slide, we'll talk about the development of the eye as an example. So here is the developing mouse eye could be a human eye. They develop the same way. Here is the retina over here. Then you see over here, you see the lens being formed. And this is the skin that's surrounding it. The lens will eventually turn this part of the skin into the cornea. And the eye, if I could have the next slide, just a very brief summary. You have the cornea on the outside, that's the protective membrane. Then you have the lens on the inside, inside that, and that will focus light on the retina, which is in the back here, okay? And those are what we'll be talking about. And how do you make the eye? Well, let's see what happens in the next slide. Okay, here is the future brain over here in the left-hand slide. And the actual photos of what it looks like in the human embryo are on the right. But here is the future brain, and you can see two bulges of the brain coming out of the brain, and then they touch the skin. And here we can see the optic vesicle, this part of the brain touching the skin. And what happens then is amazing. That part of the brain tells the skin, you're not going to become skin. You are going to become the lens. And I am going to be in contact with you. I am going to touch you. And I'm going to send out chemicals that will tell the genes to make the lens-forming genes and for you to form the lens. And as the lens forms over here in the third picture, the lens then sends signals back to this brain bulge. And its chemicals tell the brain bulge, you're no longer to become brain. I'm going to tell your genes, I'm going to tell your DNA to make the genes to become the retina. And so the lens and the retina form each other. The brain bulge tells the skin to become the lens. As the lens form, it tells the brain bulge to become the retina. The lens and the retina form each other. Then the lens will tell the skin that's remaining above it, you know, you're not going to become skin either. You're going to become the cornea, and the cornea helps the lens form its last bit and detach from it. And so you have the cornea, the lens, and the retina all forming each other. We have the next slide. This is just another schematic of it. So you have the brain over here, and it will tell the epidermis to become different things. And eventually you will get the neural retina forming, the lens forming, the cornea forming. But note, in order to form the lens, that skin, that protective epidermis, has to have seen the throat cells. It has to have seen the heart cells. It has to see the brain cells. Nothing is formed independently. And that's the beauty of the body. It's all organized together. They all interact to form each other. The lens forms the retina forms the lens will also help form the cornea will help the lens detach from the skin. They all work together. This is the law of body formation. If I can show the next slide. You see it all over the body. This is also the law of kidney formation. You have two groups of cells. They'll die if left alone. However, if you put them together, they will form the kidney. Okay, the same general law. It's interaction of immature cells to form mature cells to form an organ. Just like we saw in fertilization, that the sperm and egg mature each other by their interactions, this is what happens in the developing body. The cells that are derived from the zygote mature each other through cell interactions to create organs. If I can have the next slide. This is just a cartoon I used to show my students that organs form by the mutual coming into being of their parts. For those of you who know something about Buddhism, this is very much in tune with Buddhist philosophy. If I can have the next slide, especially the principle of Pratityasamutpada, which is the notion of codependent origination. The body forms by the codependent origination of its parts. It does through cause and effect. Also, the notion of non-self. There's no essence of the eye or essence of the retina. They're not preformed. They come into being through interaction, and they are impermanent. Everything is changing. Okay. I was asked to say something by Owen Susan about how this relates to being in the environment. If I could have the next slide. Okay. The way we form is part of our environment. What the mother mouse eats will actually affect the gene expression inside the embryo of the mouse, and actually give it protection or not protection against assaults later on. Whether or not a mouse gets metabolic disease, which is a syndrome of insulin resistance, high lipids and high sugars, depends on what the mother mouse eats. And we'll talk about this next week. The next slide shows another amazing thing, which is sometimes temperature in animals is not determined by sex chromosomes, it's determined by temperature. And in this turtle, for instance, low temperatures give males, high temperatures give females. Okay, this is one of the problems of global warming, that turtles are becoming monosexual, they're becoming all female. So we have the usual situation where the temperatures allow for a good ratio of males and females to allow the propagation of the turtles. We'll talk about this next week, how the environment influences our development. But right now, we could just talk about how the cells from the fertilized egg interact with each other to mature each other to create organs such as the eye and the kidney. DNA is not only active, it's also reactive, that it's part of a communication system. It's not acting like the unmoved mover, telling us from above what to become. It's part of a scheme of cell-cell communication. Okay, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Scott. So I'm going to invite everyone to breathe.
Thank you, Nathan.
That's a lot of information. And I think what's important to recognize is our bodies are doing all of this without us even knowing. I want you to hear that. All of this is going on without us even being aware. That's how much our bodies love us. Now we got to figure out how to love our bodies back and each other's bodies. So we were going to have 12 minutes worth of question and answer. However, we are over time. And so let's pull one question. Is there anyone who has one question?
I think I saw Jim's hand first.
Okay, Jim?
No? No, G. Johnson then?
Thank you. So this is all just wonderful, and I want to thank you all for doing the hard work to put this together. It's complex. The question I had written down for myself to follow up on is, how did we become a hierarchical over a systemic-based system, and why? And is answering or asking that question helpful or important in figuring out how to evolve back into something that is healthier? And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I think that there are many reasons why the notion of DNA as the master of our body became the rule. One of them is that it was easier to study than proteins, just for the scientific thing. Secondly, I have to say, politically, genetics was an American science, and the notion of the gene was one of the first ideas that came out of America as opposed to Europe. And so genetics grew as America grew. And as America grew in prominence, so did genetics. The science of Europe was physiology. And genetics was basically saying, we have something new. We could explain things better than the physiologists. And until World War I, America was a backwater of science. But as America progressed, so did its view of science, and genetics was part of that. And now a third part was the politics of the Cold War. And this sounds really strange, but the Russians had a view that the environment controlled development, that the environment was responsible for all the activity of the body. And this was part of the communist worldview, that nothing, that everyone started off very equal. And so they thought genetics was bourgeois capitalist science, where the genes were being used as the currency of information, and that better genes gave better individuals, and that there was a hierarchy. And that's what eugenics was all about. And the Cold War said, if the communists are saying that's environment, we know that's wrong. It's the genes. And the atomic bomb was important because the atomic bomb caused mutations, and mutations were in the DNA. And so studying mutations in the DNA was able to get funded. So scientists who were working on the genes could get funded much easier than scientists working on the environment. So we ended up knowing a huge amount more about DNA than we learned about cell communication. And so all these things kind of conspired to make DNA kind of more important than the communication networks.
So again, at some point in time, we're going to explore more deeply that very question. Obviously, we only have an hour and a half, and we're picking up some really big topics. I wanted 2 hours, but I got voted out so that you guys could go play and have fun on a Saturday, but I wanted 2 hours, just so that you know. Anyway, these are really powerful, important questions.
Mm-hmm.
And we will be addressing them slowly, once a month. So I'm going to invite everybody to breathe. We're going to move on. We're going to keep working at lesson material each time. We'll get there. This is a work in progress. Nathan, can you cue us up for imaginal cells?
Yep, just hold on.
Everybody breathe. I invite you to breathe while we're coming into space and information.
Can everyone see?
Yes.
Can everyone hear?
It's so simple, but we make it so difficult, and it's these hard things, these challenges, these horrible things we see are there to urge us to be better than we are. And I think until we start seeing that, they will continue, no matter on all levels.
We look at our economic crisis, we look at our ecological crisis, we look at our spiritual crisis, and we say, I'm not happy, society's not happy, what's wrong with us? So that is the trigger. We have to have problems to have solutions. Problems create creativity. There's no such thing as a problem. A problem is essentially a transition. So I see the crises of today as a transition point for humanity. I see them as not necessarily something that's out of the ordinary.
Again and again in nature, from the very most ancient bacteria to more recent species, they go through a juvenile phase of hostile competition to establish themselves. And then they discover the economics of cooperation. And when they find that it is cheaper and more efficient and more beneficial for everyone to feed your enemy rather than fighting them, then we are on the way to the new civilization we're all looking for.
The wonderful part about nature being fractal is that we can use patterns in nature to understand other patterns that exist, because patterns repeat themselves. So now if you want to look at a pattern that's playing itself out on this planet right now that would give us insight about what is going on. So I say, look inside a caterpillar that's growing. And a caterpillar represents, let's say, 7 billion cells living under the same skin. Each cell is a citizen. And guess what? They're like people like us. They're working every day. Cells in the digestive system are taking the food and breaking it down and making products out of it. Some cells are the motility cells. Those are the cells that move the caterpillar around. The structures of like our highways with trucks and vehicles carrying materials all over the place, something like that. Cells of the immune system are taking their job of protecting the system. Respiration system is making sure fresh oxygen is being delivered. So all the cells have jobs. The caterpillar's growing. If you were in there and a reporter, you look around and go, yeah, the economy is going great guns. It's growing every day. Everybody's working, full employment. This is the kind of thing we love to see. How much are we growing every day? Some percent every day. And then the caterpillar reaches a certain stage of growth. And at that stage of growth, it just stops eating. It can't take in anymore at this point. It's reaching a maximum size. Then if you're a cell inside that community, imagine what would happen. That you're on the job and all of a sudden there's less food coming in and you're a digestive cell and you say, well, man, the work is slowing down here. The factory is slowing down. Then all of a sudden it gets to such a low level that many cells get laid off of the job. Now their cells not working. Why? There's not enough food coming in to keep them all working. And as the food shuts down, then the other jobs are affected, because if there's no food, then there's no energy. And all the systems start laying off cells. And pretty soon, there's massive chaos under the skin of a caterpillar. Why? The systems stop growing. The cells are out of work. Nothing is evolving. And the thing is falling apart. If you were a cell in that caterpillar body at that time, you would look around and say, oh my God, our world is coming to an end. And yet, in the midst of those billions of cells, in among them are other cells genetically identical to them. No different. But they think differently. They respond to the signals differently. These cells have the interesting name called imaginal cells. And these imaginal cells come up with new visions. And what happens is, in the midst of all this chaos, when all the other cells are running around thinking the end of the world is coming, the new imaginal cells are laying out new ideas, new visions, a new plan, a new scheme, a new way of life. And around these ideas, the cells reorganize, and they start to create new massive organizations to create something much more fabulous than the previous system. A system that is much more sustainable, a system with a higher level of evolution. And that system they're constructing called the butterfly. So there's a transition from an old world of caterpillar with an old belief system and an old way of life that was no longer sustainable. And therefore, you have two choices in this world right now. You can retain your caterpillar status and go, oh my God, the sky is falling, and be in fear. Or you can say, the caterpillar is going, I want to build the butterfly. Why? Because if I become active and, positive in the process of building the butterfly, I'm engaged, I'm working, we're creating the future. If I sit there and bemoan the loss of the caterpillar, then I'm making myself sick and everything around me. Why? I'm not contributing to our evolution. And so, where are we? We're at the demise of the caterpillar stage of civilization and the rise of the butterfly.
So I'm going to invite you to breathe. And so a part of the invitation here is for us to step into our imagination. We need to collectively begin to imagine new ways of being so that we can shift from the old paradigm of caterpillar and move more fully into developing a system that is more sustainable and healthy. But we need imagination in order to do that. And that comes from us. So with that, we are going to go into breakout rooms. Susan, do you want to?
Yes. Okay. So your voices and ideas are important. We're going to have 3 people to a room. Each person will have 4 minutes. And we ask that you pick a timer as soon as you get into your room. somebody that will time. And then share your experience with respect to 3 questions, which will be posted in the chat. I'm going to say them as well, but they'll be there for you to refer to. Someone should decide to go first. And when you have a turn to speak, say your name and where you live. And then you can address one or all of the questions that we're posting. The first one is the rose. What awe and wonder do you see in the stories that we've shared or in your life? Second is the thorn. How have competitive norms or hierarchical structures impacted you or blocked our ability to cooperate? And 3, the bud. What unique gifts do you have? Where do you already play a part as a healer? So actively listen to each person as they speak for 4 minutes, then shift. At the end, there'll be a few moments for spontaneous discussion amongst you. Nathan's going to give you a little 1-minute warning at the end of each 4 minutes, and then at the time to come back to the whole room. So as I said, you may not have time to fully answer all the questions, but we invite you to continue to reflect on them with yourself after the Zoomcast. Okay, Nathan, can you post the questions?
Yep, I'll post the questions right now and then we'll break into the groups.
Very good. See you back at the whole group time.
Okay, here we go. So do you still have your seeds?
Yeah.
Oh, I lost mine. Good. All right. Yeah. So this next section, we're going to open it up to the body so that everybody has an opportunity to share their experiences.
Invite people to mute.
Yes, let's mute. So where did your imagination bring you in those conversations? You can raise your hand if you want to share.
I see L.
Hi y'all. Sorry, there's some sirens. Hi O. Let me know if you're having trouble hearing me. I'm not sure how this fits in the rosebud thorn or the paradigms we're talking about right now in genes and DNA, but what ended up coming out of my conversation with I was with Sarah, Liz, and Dana, I believe, is we talked about, when we were talking about thorn, which is like this influence of competition in our lives, and then also talking about like kind of doing that, like going from that place into the bud place. We talked a bit about the experience of like feeling silenced or like repressed or held down or not allowed to speak in some way in childhood, and then what it looks like to begin to change that paradigm, I guess, in adulthood. And, you know, we were coming at that place from gender, and also from like experiences with race too. And one thing that we touched on was that like when you first begin to speak, there can be this experience of being like, I'm quiet, I've been quiet for so long, and then suddenly you like explode into the scene. And it just, you know, Sarah brought that up in the discussion, and it just resonated with me so much about like how change can look, and that kind of caterpillar to butterfly transformation can look. I also wonder if it's related to, I think there was another video link that talked about like riots happen when people feel like they don't have other possibilities, something like that. It's a little fuzzy. I heard it kind of secondhand from another friend who watched the videos and pointed that out to me. But I wonder about that too, and about how like if often change happens only because there are no other possibilities or like ways to continue moving forward with the way things are. And because that change often looks in a way that is like kind of like uncontrolled or unsightly to a lot of people or to even ourselves. So that was just kind of affectively where we ended up in our discussion.
Thank you for sharing.
I see a hand from Holly.
Thank you. Being new, I really wanted to say something. I really like the whole thing about the sperm and the egg because I wondered, I don't think the sperm or the egg is either male or female. It's not until they come together that they be male or female. That's the way they come together. I think we're hung up so much by male, female, and I love that there were two people in the group that wanted they, them. I've often thought of using my pronouns differently too, just to be free of that awful, handicap of male, female, that it can be such a handicap in our interactions and how we relate. It's just such a shame. And I wanted to say that I like the nature and nurture thing very much. I too think that we are not trapped in our genes or DNA. I think we can affect it so profoundly with our choices, mentally and eating and everything else. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the whole experience.
Any more sharings? Now I know a lot was going on in those rooms.
I'll go. I'm Lisa. I'm new. This is my first time, and I was telling them in the group that I'm just in awe of everything. I all of it is all for me. I don't know what that means, but I'm happy about it. We talked about the questions, and we talked about we talked about it all. We talked about it as it relates to our work and the work that we do. We kind of got to know one another. I'm trying to contain myself because I'm just super excited, super happy that there are people on the planet that are really talking about living and sustaining and loving. And that's all I'm going to say, but I'm just happy about it. Thank you.
Can I also chime in?
Yeah, Stacy.
I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me because this is the most excitement I have felt in a long time. I feel like it feels like my tribe, and thank you. Thank you for, all of it. I didn't even get to hear all of it, but thank you.
I saw Jim had a hand up.
Thank you. So I just want to share one of the all pieces for me around this is that yesterday I ate a peach. And so when I read the email, I brought the peach seed from the peach that I ate yesterday. And so O knows where I'm going with this, I think. But I've been working on loving the feminine woman that lives inside of me. Because when I was a kid, I could be anything as long as it was masculine, or my dad would have killed me, or kicked me, or something. But and the peach is the word that I first used to describe a vagina. And so the significance is I have the peach seed right here. I'm going to hold on to it for a little while because it's telling me a lot of good stuff. And I'm just grateful. So thanks for hearing Jesse. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Paul had wanted to say something.
What was that? Sorry.
Paul had wanted to say something.
Yeah. But first I saw hands from Kai or Kay. Sorry.
Yep, Kai.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank O and everyone for this gathering and say that our group was really talking about coming to understand and to, I guess, hold as primary our collaborative nature, our inherent need for each other over the hierarchical competition. And thank you for sharing. I think your name, Lisa, for everyone. Thank you, everyone who's shared. It's really powerful and exciting, and your excitement and just exuberance, all of you, and everyone, really makes me believe in holding this collaborative energy as inherent in our reality, because I feel it, and I feel so suffocated by the hierarchy and the competition of it. But I have fear, I have sadness from the narratives and the stories and the reality of our society that doesn't allow us to be vulnerable, to be in awe, to be willing to learn, and to be willing to say, your contribution is necessary and so is mine. And I'm going to bring that collaborative energy preemptively before we have to compete, or hold it in myself, even if you think that we have to compete, to say that we can collaborate because this is the only way that we survive. And to override that story of needing to crush each other in order to survive, when that's what's crushing me, is that story. And so this is awakening that in me in a way that's going to help me hold that collaborative power beyond the stories where we're supposed to say, let's try to compete, let's try to fight, because I don't thrive in that scenario, and no one does, really. Thank you.
And then Ellen, and then Paul.
Oops, sorry. I just wanted to remind us of that time you hope maybe have seen when two very young infants, close enough in age, get to see each other. Two small children encounter each other and see somebody that understands what they're experiencing. And I feel that kind of joy and discovery in what we're doing here. I just wanted to share that image.
Yeah, I mean, I had some things I wanted to say, but I think Ellen really just summed it up perfectly. So I'm good. Thank you for that, Ellen. That was exactly, sums it up perfect.
You've got words, Paul. Can we hear them?
Well, I mean, like the thing that you were saying, like seeing something in another, right? That's also in me. I think that's a beautiful thing about what we're doing here in this circle, because when I was in there with Lena, we were having conversation about, what were our gifts? Like, what were the things that we saw in awe in the DNA? And our conversations went from like, what we can do, what's possible, right? And stepping outside of that hierarchical structure of we have to look to someone to save us or someone to help us, rather than like, wait, we can help ourselves. And then we can look at each other instead of as competition, as collaborators, and look at like the thing that we're up against or the thing that we're working towards as the competition, the thing that's going to bring out the best in all of us, the thing that's going to bring out our gifts. And Kai mentioned too about the vulnerability of I really appreciated how, like, you know, Lena and I were the same. We don't like talking about our gifts, so it's really cool to have someone that, you know, that's willing to step into that space and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to give this a go. And I definitely feel like it's a tribe or a village here, and I'm happy I was invited. Thanks, all. Appreciate you.
Okay, we're in our last few minutes here. Oh,
All right. I said 2 hours. Anyway, just messing with. Where are we? I lost track.
that was going to talk about what the next session was going to be, but I don't know that we're in alignment, are we?
I'm just feeling so much joy. I have no idea where I am in this moment because I'm feeling elation and joy and passion and power and collaboration and family and yes and play. So I don't know where we are in time.
Okay, well let's have next session be a little surprise to you. You'll get it in your materials. We are very open-hearted and very curious about how our time together may have touched you or changed anything for you. So we will send out a survey. There were a number of people that responded last time. You don't have to respond, but your feedback empowers us as well as may help us to get grants later on. And then, you can talk about sending the recording.
Yes. So I really am excited. So my brain's actually not working right now because I'm in so much flood of feelings. Endorphins, enkephalins, and polymorphines is what's pretty much coursing. So just keep loving on each other. We're excited that you're excited. Invite friends, and we look forward to seeing you next month. We're looking at the first Saturday of every month. If you can fill out the survey, please feel free to do so. Again, it's an invitation. It's not a demand, but it does help us out with information. Look for us in your email, bodyearthsoul@gmail.com. Thanks for playing with us.
Very briefly, that the next session will probably be on symbiosis, and not only symbiosis in among consenting adults, but symbiosis among embryos that we develop in cooperation with the rest of the world.
Oh, can you all save the chat here and make a record of the chat? There's some really important things that got shared there, please.
Yes, and please make sure that you have your name in the chat so that we can record that you have been at this session. So before we push the button for everybody to leave, make sure your name is in the chat. And this has been wonderful. Thank you for playing with us. Thank you for dreaming. Oh, your homework, your play work assignment is one, as you're moving through your day, remember to breathe. So I want to invite you to do 3 full deep breaths, conscious full deep breaths before you get out of bed in the morning and before you go to bed at night. 3 full deep breaths. Good stretching, yes, Pavi, and stretching. But the other part too that I want you to experiment with is when you're looking at people and nature as you're walking through your day, imagine all of the cells and what the cells are actually doing in that person so that you can stay perpetually in awe of each other.
See, the men are working.
Bye.
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 See you next month. Look forward to it.